Hey, welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. This is Jonathan Goodman. Today I've got a special treat for you. This is an interview from the Obvious Choice Digital Summit that happened October 6th to the 8th, 2023. Now, all interviews from the summit are actually available for purchase if you like at obviouschoicesummit.com. It's $99, 100% of everything that you pay goes to support the Tyler Robinson Foundation, which provides financial support for families battling pediatric cancer. With that said, enjoy the interview. Hope that you're doing good. All right, we're back with Alex. I met Alex about 2 years ago at an event, and we hit it off because we just geek out like mad on copywriting, marketing, but also like online marketing and content and brand. And in that time, I've just seen her continue to grow. One of just the most like special, but also down to earth, educational, I don't even know what to call it, content platforms of educators in the marketing world. And I've really loved how you've gone about that. So Alex, psyched to have you here. My first question for you is, are you happy you didn't go to law school?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So happy I didn't go to law school. Although I do think I would make an excellent lawyer.
I think you would too.
Yeah. Very happy I didn't go to law school. And thank you so much for those compliments. Honestly, like that is why I started my brand and my business, is to do things differently. So the fact that people like you notice that, who I admire your work so much, because even though I am not in the fitness or health niche, I am like blown away by your content and the way you engage your community. So I'm learning a lot from you too.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, look, there's so much that is the same and so little that's different amongst industries. And that's a lot of what this event is about. And that's a lot of what the book that I'm writing is about. And the book that I'm writing is, of course, called The Obvious Choice 2. Not a coincidence, right? And it's, I mean, yes, my background is fitness. I've worked with people, know people all over the place, but like the foundational principles of how to build a great business that works for you, I think carry over much more than they're different. I mean, really, it's not even like 80-20. I would say it's like 95-5. Like, how many different industries have people that you've, like, have you directly worked in and done copy work for, or people that you've trained worked for? Like, do you have that number?
I mean, all of them? Is that a number?
All of them.
But
right?
You're right. And it's actually something that people ask me a lot, because I get it. When you are just getting started, it feels like people have this secret code to creating community or impactful messaging. And so I get questions all the time like, okay, Alex, you teach marketing and persuasion and copywriting, but I write in this niche. It's different than your niche. And I'm like, listen, the end of the day, we're all humans talking to humans. And humans are a lot more alike and have the same fears, doubts, challenges. I mean, you list the top 10 and you've got mostly everybody covered. And so I think you're absolutely right there. Is the longer you are in this industry and the longer you're running a business, you realize we're all a lot more alike than we think. And, you know, lateral learning is sort of what I call this term of like looking to what other people in other industries are doing rather than just staying in your own industry, because that's when you get in your head like, oh, I watched John on Instagram and like he said that better than I could, so I should never start a fitness and health related business. You know, I get that that's what a lot of people do, but like I love learning from people outside and then applying it, realizing, wow, it's actually a lot more applicable than you think.
Well, and that's where we met. I mean, you and I met at an interdisciplinary business event. Mm-hmm. And I was asked I did I don't know what you would call it. They call it a fireside, which like there's no fire. I don't know what we're on the side of.
Where's the fire? This is false advertising.
We pulled up chairs up on a little bit of a riser that they call the stage. And then we talked to, 500 or 600 people, however many people were there. We talked really at them. But I was asked about this. They're like, oh, you always seem to have been ahead with whatever you're doing. And I'm curious how you do that. I'm not ahead. It's just our industry is often behind, as every industry is often behind from what's happening. And it's because industries and thought patterns seem to like inch up a little bit, right? And kind of catch up. And so what you said, it's like, well, if you go learn from other industries that have some things the same, like if you call it a local fitness studio, we use that as an example. Well, what are great local businesses that are largely commoditized or commoditized in the eyes of the customer? Because the vast majority of consumers are very ignorant consumers. They're not stupid people. They're just ignorant towards what they're buying. Like there's just too much to know. And so like carpet cleaners, plumbers, uh, tutoring services for kids. You think about all these local type businesses, study what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
because they're
Yeah.
commoditized like crazy. And some of them really stand out and some of them don't.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this idea of writing being at the core because you do so much, but I've heard you talk about on podcasts and things like that, like writing is always at the core of what you do. Why is that?
I think at the end of the day, if you had to boil down everything we do in terms of business, but even personal relationships, friendships, every interaction we have is rooted in communication. So I think that sometimes people tend to look at copywriting as this very, you know, like it's a side thing. It's this one pillar of your business that is important, but it's like one part of it. To me, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but to me, it's actually the foundation of absolutely everything that you do. You know, you think about sales, you think about people speaking on stages, you think about blog content, social media content, your PR strategies, being interviewed on a podcast. I mean, how you say what you do is so important, and how you communicate what you do is so important. And at the end of the day, all of that is words, and it's writing. And so for me, being able to communicate precisely and powerfully and persuade people to take action, who doesn't want that skill set, you know, regardless of it being in business or not? I mean, I have students that say to me, you know, Alex, I watch your YouTube channel and I'm not a copywriter, but I went into a boardroom at my job and I negotiated a higher, you know, project fee because I learned the power of communication and persuasion through words. And so to me, I mean, again, I'm biased, but to me, it's at the foundation of absolutely everything we do.
So I've spent some time and shared some meals with you and your incredible partner. So I know that this doesn't apply to you, but think about it even just like, okay, I think about this quite a bit. I don't know why. To me, it's just a really interesting psychological and social experiment. But like my friends who are still single, who are dating right now, I don't even know how I would navigate the situation where you know that everybody you're dating is dating at least 8 other people at this point. I don't even know how I would navigate that. But to your point, you got to figure out how to be memorable to that girl, man. And like, that's a story. That's a quote. When I was, when I was doing, so the process for anybody who doesn't know, when you pitch a book is, you know, you write a proposal and if you have an agent, your agent sends it to a whole bunch of editors that they have a relationship with, that they think that it might fit. And the editors say, yes, we're interested. And they request a call. Right. So I did a whole bunch of calls with executive editors from book publishing companies, and my agent prepared me for them. And I'll never forget one of the things that she said to prepare me. She said, think of this like a TED Talk. Okay. These executive editors, some of them are going to bring, you know, the person who writes the checks onto the call, but most won't. What's going to happen is they're going to have this call with you for an hour. You're going to wow them as much as you can, right? You're going to sell them on this idea. You're going to sell them on you. Cool. But then they're going to have to go and pitch you to their people. Mm-hmm. And so you have to leave them with 1 or 2 stories and quotes. She said, think of this like a TED Talk. Yeah. Was the words that she said to me. And it was great advice. So if you're guys, if you're going on a date.
What's your TED Talk? What's the quotable? Yeah.
What's the quotable? What's the story? Because like, yo, she's dating 6 other dudes at that same time. And if you like her, like, you don't want to lose her. I mean, but this is just like, it's a funny way to talk about it. But like, this to me is why this is so valuable and important, isn't it?
And going back to before we pushed record, we were talking about the power of storytelling. You know, what is it, a Maya Angelou quote, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And that to me is great. That's great copywriting. And
Yeah.
to your point of sort of like the telephone game, is like you're talking to these book publishers who are then having to go to their superiors, and if they're like, yeah, he rambled off like a whole bunch of stats. What did he say again? Like they're not going to remember that. But if they can say, he helped this person or this person do this, or this is his mission. I mean, one of my favorite things about copywriting is getting so clear on your message. Everyone remembers my mission is to dedouchify the internet. People say it back to me. And when people say it back to me, I know I've done something right, because they go, oh yeah, you're on a mission to dedouchify the internet. And then they chuckle, and I'm like, good, I made them feel a certain way, whether it's like offended or they chuckle or they laugh or they feel like, yeah, finally someone out there is calling out the BS online. And so I call that the glass of wine test. It's like, how can you share what you want to say in a way that whoever you're saying it to might be having a glass of wine with a friend at the bar later that night, or a beer. You could call it the beer test. And will they be able to, or if you don't drink, that's fine.
I'm in the fitness industry. Call it the non-alcoholic beer test. Yeah, whatever.
You're having a green juice.
Oh shit! Don't go that far. No.
And anyway, and how would they describe you to their friend? Yeah. That's what I like to think about, because it's like, it's one thing to go, how am I going to present myself to this person? Like, John, I want you to think that I'm a cool person, and that you should work with me, and that I'm memorable, and that I'm unique, and that I'm different. And oftentimes people just bleh. But what can you say that you're going to remember? And then later tonight, you're going to be like, with your wife or whatever, be like, I talked to Alex and she said this. Like, what is it? And that's a lot of pressure, And so it takes skill and practice. So it's not like you're just magically going to come up with a TED Talk overnight. I mean, those little speeches, people spend weeks, months writing, right? So
months. Yeah. Months. And there's multiple coaches.
Yeah.
That work with them on it. Yeah. I'm sure you do too. I know a bunch of people have given them, and it doesn't just happen, right? No. I mean, they're clearly, if you watch them, they're clearly formulaic as well. When they step up. Yeah. I mean, something that I learned a long time ago, which I want to talk to you about, like studying the advertising greats. I mean, we all went through that process. I feel like anybody who's a student of like advertising and marketing went through they studied the same 6 men. There was all men, of course, at that time. Not anymore, thankfully, but it was all men at the time. But the overwhelming piece of advice was one thing. One thing is more effective than many things, regardless of the situation, because one thing's memorable. And that was what we practiced on these call them book pitching. The meetings are so interesting because like I'm selling to them, but they're also selling to me because they know that other people are interested. And it's like this weird like back and forth. But one of the things that we knew that they were going to ask us about is, okay, we get it. Like, at this point, if they put up their hand for the meeting, like they really love the book. Okay. So they're like, we love the book. We love the idea. We love your approach. We love your writing. Like, how are we going to sell you as a fitness guy to our audience? Right. And I knew we knew that was going to be a main question.
Why you? Yeah.
Why you? Right. Like that's a big part when a reader picks up a book. I mean, that's what you're thinking. Like, who is this person to teach me about this thing? That's a lot of what's kind of going on in our head. Yeah. And so I'd say, a lot of people from a lot of different, industries are starting to discover my work and asking me for questions. That's happening, but that doesn't really mean anything to anybody. So I said that, and I was like, just last week, we found out that a children's magician is taking my course. And a guitar instructor is taking my course. And these are just some of the things that are starting to happen as people from other industries who can't get this type of support are finding our things. And it's just like the minute that I say children's magician, it's that exact same response to you. Every single person was like, now they get it, right? Like, because to me, it's what you said. It's that emotion, 100%, which you hit on, which I don't know. I had to learn like emotional intelligence from a textbook. Like I'm that kind of guy. But to me, it's also like surprise and intrigue is memorable. Like, oh, that's weird, but it tells a story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it tells a story. And it makes people think of, I literally can picture a guy with a cape and like cards.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden I have a visual, and I think that's so interesting. And so you can say multiple industries, or you can get specific. I think
Just
that
one industry that's like, well, if there's like a
Exactly.
children's magician, there's probably this other crap, right?
Oh, I'm sure you could probably find a few examples of just the broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is oftentimes people think that, and this is sort of a lesson in storytelling, but people think that specificity means that you're alienating people. And I understand where that mentality so people think, when it comes to getting, let's say, specific on who you serve, they go, well, I want to serve everyone. I can help everyone. My work can help everyone. Just like I think copywriting can serve everyone. I'm very mindful about not saying, hey, everybody, I'm everybody's coach. Everyone, I'm helping you solve all of your problems. So specificity is powerful, but in storytelling, it's even more powerful, because the more specific the story, the more relatable it is. And so it's this idea that seems counterintuitive, because you think, if I'm getting really, really specific about my story, people are going to tune out. They're going to glaze over if it doesn't apply to them, or they fall outside that world. But what happens is, if you can get really, really specific in terms of emotions, not necessarily just facts, but specific in terms of what happened and the emotions it brought up, everybody feels emotions. And what you'll find is that the more specific you can be, like, I can think of a story of one of my students who, she had a bagel business, and
What was her name? You can make up a name.
Her name was Maria.
Okay.
That's her real name, but it's a common name. So she won't mind me telling the story. So Maria lives in Montreal.
And she had a bagel business. That sounds made up.
Yeah, right, Maria. And she had this bagel business, and she was, like, just like anything, passionate about wanting to get her business off the ground. She struggled. She was, looking at her bills every month going, oh my gosh, is this something that I can do? Can I make this happen? Putting her blood, sweat, and tears, her whole life savings into this, going to bed every night thinking, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to let my family down. I'm going to let my husband down. Like, what the heck am I doing? That story that I just told you about Maria with the bagel business is so relatable, even if you don't even like bagels. I'm gluten-free and it's relatable to me, and it's because you can tell the story of, like, Maria going to bed at night and thinking, is this business going to make it? And then, discovering copywriting, starting her copywriting business, and what doors that opened for her. If I can tell you a story, you're going to remember that, versus me saying, yeah, I've helped people, start copywriting, thinking that that's more relatable.
And I'm a Jewish guy who likes bagels, so that story hits home. But I agree. I mean, what I love about that story is how emotional it is, and how, everybody can connect to that. And and then I looked at the bill from whoever, or I looked at my ingredients cost and how much I was wasting. Just one, like, tidbit to, like, really put them in. Because you're right, people take those stories and they make them their own, don't they? It's such a big worry that I hear all the time too. And I'm so glad that you called this out, of people saying, like, oh, well, I'm scared that if I talk about this too specifically to one person, nobody else will listen or care. First of all, I would argue it's probably not such a big deal, because people like that one person is probably more than enough business than you ever need. But also, I don't think that happens, does it?
No. And I think part of what makes it so powerful as well, so there's this concept, I forget who coined this, but it's used in, like, in storytelling and in screenwriting and things like that. But it's called narrative transport, which is what happens when you're telling a story. Naturally, your guard goes down and you lean in and you want to know how the story ends. If I go in and start telling you about my copywriting services, and I'm just using my business as an example, it could be any type of business. If I go in and just start telling you about my business immediately, and it's because the market is savvy to sales now, like, we can look at what the old school advertising guys did, but we also have to remember that, like, they were selling stuff when it was still novel to see, like, a squeeze page online. You're like, what is this? I have to put in my email? Well, that's weird.
Even before online. I still remember reading a Dan Kennedy book where he was talking about how scared people are that the internet's coming.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and long before online, people are savvy to sales, and now more than ever, because there's so much noise, and people want to really quickly count you out. Like, anytime anyone reads messaging online, the first hurdle you have to get over is not to, like, be compelling and get them to, to lean in and pay attention. It's
Right.
to get them to not count you out immediately. Because most of us are literally just filtering like
So how do you
faster than
do
we can
that?
even.
So how do you do that? Because you're talking like social media, you're talking like something flies in their email and they're
Yeah.
probably sitting on the
Bing.
toilet or wherever else they are reading the social media. Like they're not in a state where they're saying, I am coming here to buy something right now.
No.
So how do you
You be relatable and relevant. That's and you can only be relatable and relevant by being specific. And does it mean you'll alienate some people? Yeah, absolutely you will. But that's kind of the point, So you want people, going back to that narrative transport idea, you want people to like bring their guard down so that they actually listen to what it is that you're saying, rather than trying to poke holes in all the reasons why they need to count you out or unsubscribe to your list or whatever. And storytelling is a great way to do that.
Tell me about, you were mentioning before, one of the famous examples from one of the charities with storytelling and how important it is to be specific.
Yeah.
To one thing. What's that example?
So it was done by the organization called Save the Children. And
Okay.
I want to say, I could pull up the exact person who did the study, but anyone listening to this could just Google it. But if you Google like Save the Children brochure storytelling example, it basically is a test that they did where they sent out one brochure that had only fact-based information. So it said something like, your donations help impact, I'm making this up, 10,000 lives and this many families and this many gallons of water, or this many schools built or whatever. And like, that's nice, but like
this absurd, like, look at how amazing this is, this impact that you're having. Like anybody would be like, oh my God, that's incredible.
Right. And when you can actually look at it and be like, wow, that is actually amazing, right? But the whole point of the brochure was to get people to donate money.
Right. And so nobody did anything with that one, right?
Yeah, they were just like, okay. I mean, they got, let's just say like they got $1 per person that saw this brochure on average with this first brochure. Okay. And then they decided to change it up, and all they did was they featured the story of one girl, a 7-year-old whose life had been changed by the donations from Save the Children. And that's all it was. It was a simple story. That's it. And donations went up like some crazy amount, like doubled the amount of money that they were able to bring in. And the wild thing about it is, and this is kind of the secret of marketing, is because I get asked a lot, like, how do you continually sell the same thing? I only have one product or one service, or I only offer one thing. How many different ways can I talk about it? I've already posted about it twice on my social this week. I've already emailed my list about it. And what's interesting is I never really, unless I'm in a launch, I never specifically talk about my programs on email or social media unless I'm like actively promoting it. For me, it's all about storytelling. It's all about sharing valuable information. It's all about bringing people in so that they pay attention, so that when I am ready to promote something, they're already leaning in and that guard is down. And so it really becomes a lot more fun when you think of marketing that way.
And just looking for these stories amongst your customers, amongst your clients, or even when you want to promote anything. I mean, this is like the summit that you're in. I want to get word out. This is the first one that we're doing. I wanted to give all of the money to charity because it's just a good opportunity to do that. And so it was like, okay, well, I can say 100% proceeds go to charity. We'll figure out what the charity is. Right? I can say 100% of proceeds go to the Tyler Robinson Foundation that supports provides financial support to pediatric cancer families. Or I can say, about a year and a half ago on a Sunday night, Nova Kennedy, who's 5 years old, had a headache at dinner. It got so bad that her parents took her to the hospital. Within 48 hours, she was in surgery for full-blown brain tumor. 9 months and 5 rounds of chemotherapy later. She's in remission. It's hopeful. But what nobody talks about is the financial toll that this period took on Nova's life. Her mother, who's a good friend of mine, was not able to work for 9 months. They have mortgage payments, extra transportation payments, extra medical payments. Over 60% of families that suffer from pediatric cancer never financially recover. Over 40% of families that have a case of pediatric cancer, this unfair, unjust disease, never are able to eliminate debt that has directly resulted from the cancer. The Tyler Robinson Foundation provided financial assistance to Nova's family and helped them through this tough time. And every dollar that we take in, I'm covering all the expenses, so every dollar we take in as a result of the summit is going to support the Tyler Robinson Foundation in Nova's name. Think about the difference. I'm saying the exact same thing.
That was like copied on the fly. I am impressed. We need to clip that out.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
In all three cases.
Yeah.
Think about the difference between, and everybody's got like, oh God, what was her name? Maria with the bagels, the French Canadian bagel connoisseur.
Yeah.
It's like, you've probably got a good story there of somebody who comes in to buy bagels and there's some memory with the Bubby and Zadie where every Saturday morning they would come over for bagels for the grandkids, and what a special time. And I mean, ask me how I know as a Jewish guy. Like, this is what we do.
I was like, that must be your grandparents. Yeah. Well,
I mean, my parents live around the corner, fortunately, so we see them a lot. But it's true. Everybody's got a story. I mean, if a woman in Montreal with a bagel shop can have a story that is meaningful and related to the family.
Yeah, and everyone has that. And I think a lot of times people they compartmentalize too much, like when it comes to marketing and what should be shared. And I always like to say, your customers, they don't only want to know what you do, but they want to know who you are. And so you might ask yourself, well, what is this story of like me overcoming this adversity or feeling imposter syndrome, or, what I felt the first time I hired a coach and put any sort of money into my business, or any of these things? Like, what does that actually have to do with what I'm selling? And the answer is probably more than you think, because now a huge shift that I see being made in buying behavior is that people want to put their money where their values are. So more than ever, they're standing back and they're watching, and they're saying, I'm no longer just going to fall for the flashy button or the hypey headline. Who's behind this business? Oh, I've never heard of this person. Or maybe there's not even a face attached to the business. Instead, they're watching, they're engaging, they're looking at who, like, they're planting seeds for future purchases. And so I follow so many people that, like, I don't buy from right away. And then when I am ready to invest in whatever it is that they're selling, I have them kind of in the back of my mind. And I have customers on my list that have literally been on my list for years before they made their first purchase.
I know. Isn't that funny? Hey, I've been following you for 8 years and I finally just bought, you never even said hello.
Yeah. Like,
hi.
But it's true. And so I think, like, if I can give advice to anyone on the marketing side, is like, stop thinking about marketing as this like perfect closed system that has to be done, in a specific way. If you are a person selling to people, which hopefully until AI becomes, like, that's a whole other conversation. Hopefully we're all people selling to people.
Sure. Marketing
can actually be a lot simpler, and it's adding value, and it's having conversations and being okay that some people aren't going to buy from you right away, but that they're getting to know who you are, and making your audience feel understood at the primary foundational emotion that they need to feel in order for them to feel safe enough to then give you money. The way you can tell stories to make people feel understood, if that's all you do in your marketing, you are 90% ahead of most people.
It's funny that you just mentioned 90%, because over 90% of purchases are made through trust and or word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Which means that by the time that you can actually measure a purchase well,
right,
over 90%, what I say in the book, over 90% of the obvious choices have already been hired.
Interesting.
You just don't see it.
Yeah.
You can't measure it. And because you don't see it, I mean, all humans do this. It's natural. I mean, how could you not do this? We put way too much emphasis on things we can see and measure, and almost none on the stuff that we don't. But I mean, it's it would be pretty hard to argue that what we can see in the world makes up, give or take, 0.00001% of what actually goes on in the world.
Right.
I mean, we just
Yeah.
can't see it. You don't see somebody telling somebody about a business. You don't see the vast majority of people, you hit on it, that are watching but not even interacting. I get all the time like, oh, it's the same, like, whatever, 5 people who like my post every day. Like, what can I do to, like, engage other people? It's like, other people are watching.
Yep.
Other people are watching, and you will get people who will purchase, who will say, I love the stuff that you put out there.
Yep.
And you'll be like, well, where were you? I needed that emotional support.
It's so true. Where were you when I needed you? I thought it was just my mom. Yeah, but that's it though. Like, I actually had a student say this the other day.
Oh, what did they
like,
say?
He's like, so his name's Evan, and he's starting his copywriting business, and he's really been leaning into LinkedIn and posting on LinkedIn, and he was like in the valley of despair, being like, I was posting and like I was getting nothing. Like, I was posting every day, I was getting nothing. I was posting and I'm like, okay, you were getting nothing, which let's be honest, starting a business, you don't start a business because you want validation. I mean, you start a business because you're passionate about it, and then hopefully one day, you're validated for your work. But like, I went from having a job where I was like star employee, get a pat on the head every day, to then starting my business and realizing like you got to do it because your heart's in it and you love it and you want to help people.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you do it. But he's posting on social media every day and on LinkedIn, and wasn't getting like anything. And he's like, is this even working? And then
this is Evan,
months, yeah. And then a couple months later, he did a post and I think made an offer or invited a few people for like a strategy session. And he got a couple of messages, and he's like, these are people that I literally have never even seen their name before on LinkedIn. They haven't liked any of my posts. And he's like, but they were watching. Exactly what you said, is that you have to really think of marketing as like slowly planting seeds, and some sprout quicker than others. And knowing that just because someone doesn't like follow the progression of like, comment, subscribe, sign up, make a purchase right away, then make another purchase, like everyone's path looks different. And how can you make sure in your marketing you're speaking to all of these people, because it is getting harder to measure. And that's kind of how I treat marketing, is like just planting seeds and knowing that most of it is totally unmeasurable.
We went through a phase a number of years back. I feel like you and I can commiserate over this over drinks next time that we see each other. We went through a phase a couple of years ago with my business where we were like really trying to measure everything. We have a website with 1,500, close to 2,000 articles now. We had a couple million people on it a year, and we had God, I don't even know how many analytics software was plugged in. I mean, we were spending over $8,000 a month just on analytics software, let alone multiple consultants. Let alone multiple consultants from $3,000 to $5,000 a month to analyze it, make sense of it, and tell us what we should do. And it's painful because none of it made any difference. But it was when it came to a head for me was when I looked at it, and our head of marketing at the time came to me and he goes, really, really good news. We were able to get like our main landing page for our main program, right? Like most important landing page. Like, we were able to get the conversion on this page to cold traffic from 0.75 to 1.25%. Amazing. I was like, oh, that's a pretty significant jump. Like, that's great. But like, why were we spending all that time trying to improve the conversion when we could have just been sending tens of thousands of more people to that page and had a worse conversion and came out with more? And I made a big switch after that, where we stopped all of the measure. I was like, maybe one day we'll bring back the measurements, but like, what are we doing here? We're focusing on the stuff that we can measure for no other reason than we can check it off on a box. What if we just do so much more at the top of the funnel and feed that? And then we don't need to measure anything.
I mean, and that's it. Like, I think a lot of times, like,
this is not business advice, by the way.
Exactly. But I feel you. Like, there's this sweet spot somewhere in the middle where it's like knowing that metrics are important to a certain extent, because then that tells you where you can improve. But I agree. I think so many people get caught up on the little things. Like I'll quote a client, a former client of mine said this, and I don't know if he made it up or if he heard it from somewhere, but it's sort of my philosophy with marketing and testing in general is he says, first test the forest, then test the trees, then test the branches, then test the leaves. And I love that so much because nobody wants to test the forest. Nobody wants to like be like, let's just create something new that we've never done before that's a little bit scary that might not work. Instead, like let's just spend hours talking about what button color is going to like nominally increase the click rate on this button or whatever. And I think the people who really make an impact in marketing are the people who obviously we still want to look at metrics. I track metrics knowing that they're not 100% accurate because a lot of these attribution tools just cannot be with omnichannel marketing now. It's impossible to know truly what was the one thing that made that person go yes.
And with Apple's privacy restrictions and everything now, like you can't.
You can't.
You have to give it a pretty significant buffer.
Exactly. Yeah. And so instead being like, well, how do we just like shake shit up in a way that that allows me to do what I want to do without following what everyone else is doing, but learning, like taking best practices, but like taking big swings, you know? And I think that is marketing. And I think a lot of, you know, marketing, you know, purists will want to tell you like that it is all about like, you know, getting these perfect conversion rates. And like, if you increase the conversion rate at every level, then you're like, yes, that's all true.
100%.
But like, in order to even make that statistically significant, you have to have volume. Like, don't come at me about a conversion rate when you've only had 5 people buy from you. Like that's not going to work. So
I want to like double down on that and just how important that is. Like you need to have a minimum 200 conversions to measure anything. And that's on the low end, which means that if you're not getting 200, and that's a single thing, right? That's a single test. So you have to have, if you're A/B testing some, like that's one change to your page that you're testing. A minimum 200 conversions to figure that out. You got to get volume. And if you don't have volume, I like that. The forest to the trees, to the branches, to the leaves.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not gonna come up with those big forest ideas by just like deeply analyzing every tiny little thing.
So why is there this obsession then over that type of stuff? I mean, you don't have to go very far on, I'm going to age myself, on marketing blogs, to social media channels, to call them marketing influencers, to see that the vast majority of content is on things like button colors. Like why is that?
It's because everyone wants an easy button. Everyone thinks that there's a secret that they're missing and it must be that button color. The truth of the reality, like the truth of the matter is marketing is about creatively solving problems, and like you can't sell that. That's hard to say to people, like you have to creatively solve problems. That sounds hard. You know, but if I make it sound like marketing is just this really simple system, and like that's again, like I'm a marketer, so like I'm not poo-pooing on marketers, but it's like let's have a higher level conversation. Who are you serving, and how are you going to do it, and how are you going to say it, and how are you going to stand out? You know, like I built a marketing brand in a very oversaturated online marketing world, and was able to grow my business quite quickly. And guess what? I've never done, I mean, up until recently, never done affiliate stuff, never did a webinar, never did, like, all I did was had a really, really good product. And this is another thing I want to like debunk. You can have $1 million business by selling one product to the right people over and over again. That's all it takes.
With one marketing channel, with one conversion system.
Exactly.
One marketing channel, one conversion system, one product. You could easily do 1 to 3 million a year.
Easy.
And then you start maybe looking at not easy, but that should be the focus. Like until you're doing those numbers with one main channel, with one conversion system, with one product, you should not think that there's more opportunity somewhere else, or like optimize where you're at.
Yeah,
because it all works.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's it. Like it all comes down to market offer fit. And so I think oftentimes, you know, people will create a product and it won't maybe sell as great as they want. And so then they're like, well, I need to create something different. And maybe that's true, because maybe the first offer wasn't a great market offer fit. And that's totally fine. Like, marketing is experimentation. But once you find something that does work, you like, help as many people as possible solve that problem. Because trust me, I've fallen down that path of trying to do too much, trying to launch too much, and realizing and looking back and going, oh my gosh, it was all just because I was sort of addicted to the newness. And I think entrepreneurs all have that. But marketing can be simple. But that's going back to your question, is why is everyone so obsessed with like sort of the little hacks and the tricks? And it's because that's easier to sell. It's like, oh, you don't know about this? Oh my God, like everyone knows about this. No, like the best marketers are the ones who are creatively solving problems for people and doing it in a way that's relatable and relevant.
I agree with you. What makes for good content isn't necessarily the thing that's most important.
Right.
And I don't think either of those two things are necessarily bad or good. I think they just are. But I think that what we need to do is we need to be able to dissociate and say, all right, this is content, especially short form, quick hit type social media content, which is most of what we consume these days, unfortunately. There's a line that leads one of the sections of the book, which is getting a good vision is like reading Twitter all day and then one day figuring out that there's such a thing as books.
And you could have read a whole book at the time that you read all those tweets. Yeah.
But the short form stuff is fine for whetting your appetite. Mm-hmm. And I think that's okay. But what makes for good short form stuff is not necessarily the most useful. It's just what makes for better short form stuff.
Totally.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Talk to me about some of the core components of, call it your content, but really it just seems like everything. I mean, I've heard you talk about on podcasts and things like that about TV shows and screenwriters and talking about hooks and open loops and things. How do you think about, when you think about a subject you want to discuss, how do you think about formulating that story?
Man, I can tell you it's about 80% thinking of the hook, So if I have a really simple formula like ABC that I follow with all content that I create, whether it's social media, email, it's all about A, getting attention first. So getting them to stop the scroll. Then B is all about the big promise, or like the benefit, how is it relatable to them? Which I think once you get their attention, the next thing you want them to do is go, oh, this is for me. This is solving a problem I have, or entertaining or relevant to me in my life somehow. And then the third thing is C, is a call to action, tell them what to do next, even if it is just to let me know what you think. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below, click here, giving people a next step. When you're talking about, marketing content, not all content I do has a call to action, but for the most part, whether maybe it doesn't in the video, but it will in the caption. But most of that focuses on the hook. I can tell you, even right now, I'm planning to do actually like my first ever kind of webinar, and I'm getting so in my head about it because I know how important it is to get the hook right. And there's so many different ways you can go about it, And so for me, I like to think of my audience, and I like to think about what is one specific and early challenge they're experiencing. Because a problem, and I've made this mistake a lot, is sometimes I'm too aspirational, right? I'll be like, this is how you can build a $1 million business, right?
Right.
Is that relatable to people, or are people immediately going to say,
depends who you're talking to.
Right. Depends who you're talking to. Like, is that the audience? Is that the right hook? Is this the right hook? And I think that that takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes knowing your audience. And so I think oftentimes we tend to overcomplicate it when really sometimes specific and simple. How can I help them solve one challenge, or that early challenge? When I say early challenge, I mean the first challenge.
What do you mean by that? Like where they're at? Like, is that like, do you mean like where you're meeting them where they're at in their head?
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Yeah, okay. Where they're at, exactly. And when I say early challenge, so like I kind of have a system where I talk about like prequel challenges and sequel challenges, but like we all, as we grow in life and business, it's a series of challenges. Some challenges are further down the road than others. Like I have, students who are now looking to start building agencies and bringing on business partners. And it's like, we're having business model conversations.
Right.
Very different than people who find me who are like, wait, I can quit my 9-to-5 job and get paid to write. It's
Right.
a different
I can make
challenge.
$60,000 a year and move to a bummy beach town. Like, this is life-changing.
Yeah,
right?
this is life-changing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, one of the best exercises someone can do is really map out, like, what is that roadmap of challenges? Because oftentimes the more experienced you get in what you do, the more you tend to focus on challenges that are more relevant to you, but might not be relevant yet to your audience or feel unattainable. And I've made that mistake in marketing before too, where people say to me, oh, I didn't realize this was for me because it just seemed too advanced. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, I didn't realize that. And so that's almost a bigger challenge the bigger your business gets, because you become farther away from those early challenges. And so that to me is, and we can start talking about like what's top of funnel versus middle versus bottom. But like when I say early challenges, I mean like top of funnel, like going to serve the biggest group of people in your audience to the greatest extent, so that you can then guide them through your marketing and help them solve future challenges, if that makes sense.
It does. That was really helpful. I mean, for me, selfishly, I wrote down some notes. But that idea of top of funnel and the focus on the top of the funnel, and social media largely is that. Like I look at my podcast as being like middle of the funnel. I had some little punchy thing that I wrote. Like, my social media is not. It's janky. Like, it's just like,
I love your social media.
I just write. Like, but again, like, this is what I like to do. And I have my own theory, which is writing the written word. There's going to be less growth, but there's going to be more depth. And so, I people tell me it's like, oh, I liked what that person was saying, but then I missed something, and then I didn't want to go back and watch the whole video again, so I just left. Was with writing stuff, they can revisit it and stuff, so the time on post seems to be quite a bit longer on average.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's less sexy for sure, less immediately appealing. But I find that the community that grows through writing seems to be deeper often, even though it takes longer to build than it does with video. It's all but more than anything else. It's just like, choose your one thing. Yeah. Like I think that just about anybody can go from not that good to good at just about anything. I think there's only a few things that somebody can go from good to truly great at. And I think it's really, really valuable to test on yourself and figure out what it is that, like, okay, I'm up all night thinking about this. I like consuming this type of material. I've never watched YouTube. Like we were, team was like, oh yeah, we should really get going on YouTube and on TikTok and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I started filming videos, and I was like, oh, why aren't these videos very good? And I was like, oh yeah, I've never watched a YouTube video, and I've never watched a TikTok in my life. How the heck do I ever think that I have a chance of competing there? Meanwhile, the minute that I'm done recording these stupid things with the videography team, I'm sitting down and I'm reading a book for 2 hours. So I think with enough work, I have a chance at being a world-class writer. I'm not there yet. It's going to take a few decades. Like, this thing takes work, but that's the shot that I'm going to take.
Yeah.
And I think it all works, but the idea is like, all right, I hooked you in with this like punchy thing, like top of the funnel. Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all, let's have a conversation about this now, because there's more to it. You want to do that?
Exactly.
Let's jump on the podcast. Then that idea of the hook.
Yep.
What would you say? The hook is the first line, the first 2 lines?
Yeah.
Give or take?
Yeah. Like, and it's, if you're even thinking in terms of videos, it's the first sentence. It's oftentimes on short form, it's the text that's written, on the screen when it pops up.
Do you think about that like that? Do you think about it as the text versus what you verbally say? Or
yeah. So
specific?
my process. So going back to, with the content we create with video content, I love what you said, and it's exactly kind of my philosophy. Is my middle of the funnel content is very much lives on my YouTube channel. I still do
Yeah.
top of the funnel stuff on my YouTube channel because obviously I want that audience to grow as well. But my short form content is like very much, primarily top of funnel, and I call those quips. And then I call middle of the funnel tips, and then I call bottom of the funnel clips. So quips is like those quick, like those are like the sassy, like this is going to get a lot
That's
of.
the most copywriting thing to ever say.
I've come up with a framework where it's, you got a quick opinion, you want to share, it's top of the funnel. A lot of people are going to say something about it. Usually it's not a framework or a teaching point. It's me just like ranting about something.
Sure.
Then tips are like, let me tell you 3 things, 4 things, 5 things, very related, very relevant to my audience. So a little bit more middle of the funnel. And then bottom of the funnel clips is like, I might share a clip of a longer form interview where we're getting into more of a nuanced conversation. And it's like, it's very much like relationship building as opposed to
like what we're doing.
Yeah. Like, oh, this isn't going to get maybe a ton of views. And even if you look at my YouTube channel, my interviews tend to have lower views, but the people who watch are the people who are at the bottom of my funnel, who have been watching my content forever. And they're so excited that I'm not just doing another, like, how to start your copywriting business type of video, So it's important to think about everyone in your audience and how you can speak to them and add value. And then when I'm creating videos, we have the hook created before we even record the video.
Yeah.
And that's because it's very hard to market a video after the fact and go, damn it, if we could have called it this, we could have then made sure we spoke on that subject and it would have had a lot more, it would have had a lot more legs to get attention. So it's
the first thing I do.
Yeah.
It's 100%. The first thing I do too. Like we have a podcast, right? We record twice a week, and then we put like a hot seat with one of our students as the third one. So we do a lot of content.
Wow,
I mean, it's a lot of hours that we've done there. I mean, hundreds of hours. And the same thing when I'm public speaking and that. The only thing, I mean, I'll often have notes, like I'll often have like bullet form notes of like stories I want to tell in a general order or whatever. But the only thing that I'll do is I'll sit there and I'll say, what's the first line? Mm-hmm. What's the first line? And say the first line and then get into welcome to the, welcome at the podcast. It's also called The Obvious Choice. There's a branding plan here, but that idea of like the first line is the hook, is the promise, is the misconception, is the whatever, right? But hooks you into being like, yo, I got to listen to that. Yeah, and then, 100%. Hey, welcome back again. Thank you for being here. So talk to me about like, do you incorporate any kind of open loops in any kind of your marketing and in any kind of your content?
All of it.
Or is that more? How?
And so open loops are this thing that so for anyone listening who doesn't know what an open loop is, it's any concept that just naturally forces your brain to want to seek out some sort of conclusion.
Yeah.
We see this all the time when we read like those listicle sites where it's like 14 reasons why, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's so related to me. Oh my God.
Number 3 will surprise you or something. You're like, I need to know what number 3 is. Right. Yeah.
So those are all very obvious examples of open loops, or watching TV shows when you're like, the perfect example of this, and I love being a marketer because you analyze everything. Like, I used to love watching The Bachelor. I know, super basic, whatever. I'd watch The Bachelor, and if you remember back in the olden days, the rose ceremony would be at the very end of the episode. So you would watch this entire episode, and then the episode would end with the Bachelor or the Bachelorette giving out the roses, and then someone would go home.
What's the rose ceremony? Oh, if you don't get a rose, you got to go home?
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't know this. Yeah.
I'm just pretending I don't. I knew what it was. Right. I just pretended it. I know exactly. I knew exactly what you were talking about. And
what I found was you could easily skip an episode because you're like, you would just see who was missing from the roster. You're like, oh, that guy must have gone home last week. Okay, whatever. Right. But they changed it so that the rose ceremony now happens in the middle of the episode. So they have all this drama, rose ceremony, and then drama, and then you have to watch the next episode to close the loop on that new drama, right? As opposed to it being this nice single little like thing you could take off the shelf, take it or leave it. Kind of like the old sitcoms. Like you could miss an episode of Friends and be like, I don't need to go back and watch it.
And a lot of why, I mean, it's interesting with Friends, right? Friends is basically just like a cultural memory at this point, as opposed to shows like The Office, where it's bigger than it's ever been. Yeah. And you think about why, and it has to do with character development. It has to do with open loops. It has to do with continuation of theme. It's wildly different. those two shows and how much they've lived on in our
Right.
minds.
Because once you start, you be with The Office, you do become very, even though every episode is quirky and has their own like little takeaways and funny writing and jokes and things like that, like you do follow along with the characters. And so I think in marketing, like there's one big journey that people are on with you, which is like invested in who you are. And you know, some of my students that have been with me since day one, like Maria, the bagel connoisseur turned copywriter, you know, like she's on this journey with me because she remembers when I launched my very first program, you know, like she was one of my very first customers. And so there's this kind of overarching journey that people are on where they like to see the imperfections or the what's going to happen next, or how is she going to handle that, or what's going to be the next book she does, or next, I have no books, the first book she does, you know, all of that. And then there's the mini open loops that happen, you know, in between emails. And then there's the smaller open loops that literally happen from line to line. I mean, I do this in my videos where I'll say, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a really easy resource that'll help you make all of this a lot easier. So stick to the end and I'll make sure you get your hands on that. Right. That's an open loop, right? The whole point is to get people leaning forward, engaged, and staying as long as possible when we know that we're all in this attention business, you know? And so there's like cringy ways to do it, and we've all seen clickbait, and then there's, you know, powerful ways to do it, but either way, it takes practice.
Well, Alex, this is super, super useful. So thank you for doing this. I'm super grateful for you. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks. Awesome. Thanks, John. Bye. Bye.